It is time to talk beer. Mirella Amato is on a crusade to make us understand the potential of beer. She is the author of the book Beerology, and she also writes a blog of that same name. And she's in town for the Quebec Craft Brewers Conference. And welcome.
Thank you.
And it's so nice to see you again.
It's great to see you. Thanks for having me.
So it's getting into winter,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to ask you about winter beers, because beer's not just a summer drink, right? Because I think most of us think of it as like a hot day of summer, you have a beer.
Well, obviously on a hot day, a cold, refreshing beer is delicious and amazing. But there is a beer for every mood, every food, and every occasion. And in the winter, of course, some people still enjoy those golden lager beers. But if you're looking for something a little more season appropriate, maltier beers with roasted flavors and caramel flavors, they're very soothing at this time of year. They also pair better with the kinds of the heartier food that we eat at this time of year. And the great thing, especially here, there's a thriving craft beer movement. Brewers will release special beers for this time of year. And those beers tend to be higher alcohol. They do have these caramel or roasted notes, things like Russian Imperial Stout, which basically tastes like chocolate with sometimes some cherry notes and raisin, and it's higher alcohol, and it's so comforting on a cold winter day, you know, at the end of the day.
And there's mulled beer as well?
Well, yes, you can have tons of fun with it. At this time of year, I do enjoy mulling beers, although I haven't started yet. It's not cold enough, thank goodness.
What does it mean exactly?
If you mull beer, it's very similar to mulling wine. So you can heat up your beer. Again, I recommend the sorts of beers I was talking about. So amber, brown to darker beers, slightly higher alcohol content, maybe something 6% and up. You can add normal mulling spices. Usually we add a little bit of brandy, but you can also do it without brandy and have a much lower alcohol beverage.
Wonderful, actually.
It's delicious. And there are two variations you can do. One is with egg yolk whipped in, which adds a little bit more texture, but my favorite variation is called lamb's wool. And in that case, you peel and core some apples and you put some brown sugar in there. You bake them for about 45 minutes. You mull your beers separately, and then you throw the apples in and they fall apart into the beer, and it kind of looks like lamb's wool. That's why it's called lamb's wool. It's an old traditional recipe. You can find many recipes online. I'll probably post one on my website for the winter season. It's delicious.
And, you know, the last time, I spoke to you, you were talking about all these misconceptions that people have about beer. And one of the things that struck me in the notes that you sent me is all the things that we think go with wine go better with beer. Things like wine and cheese, wine and chocolate can actually be done with beer. And it sounds quite wonderful the way you describe it.
Absolutely. Well, most cheese specialists will agree that beer is a much more natural pairing for cheese than wine. It surprises a lot of people, but if you stop and think about it, from a production perspective, they're both made in similar areas. So they're either both farmhouse products, or in the monastic tradition of Belgium, for example, they make beers and cheeses together. From an ingredient perspective, I read this in a book once, you could argue that they're both made from grains and grass, except, one has been through the digestive system of a cow on the way. But the base ingredients are the same, and they're both fermented. So as a result, you have a lot of parallel flavors, nutty flavors, herbal notes, caramel notes can be found in both cheese and beer. So it's a great pairing there. Plus, beer has two great strengths. One, it's lower alcohol, so you can use it to quaff down a saltier cheese or a richer cheese without worrying about getting too tipsy. And finally, the carbonation. Carbonation helps to scrub oils, so between every bite, you're getting your palate refreshed, and you can enjoy every bite of cheese like it's fresh and new. So tons of fun to explore. And
very quickly, because we're almost out of time, but you talk about the carbonation, and this is another one of the myths that you talk about. People think that beer is very filling, and they think that the solution is to get rid of all the foam.
Yes, well, actually the solution is the opposite. So what you want to do is to pour the beer vigorously, and that will release some of the foam into a nice head on top of the beer. That brings the aromas up to your nose, but it also releases some of the carbonation. Now, for people who are really not fans of the carbonation, I would also recommend cask conditioned ale, which is a different way to serve beer. It's an old school British way of serving beer. I'm sure you've heard the notion that old British beer is flat and warm. It's just slightly higher in temperature. It's served around cellar temperature and has much less carbonation, and people who don't enjoy the carbonation aspect of beer might enjoy that particular style.
Sounds fascinating. So you've got a website, beerology.ca.
Yes.
I'm going to check it out to get that recipe for the mulling of the beer. It
I'll
sounds
make sure to
fantastic.
post it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.